ERP costing. Does that sound like a nightmare to a lot of people? Generally, an ERP implementation runs in lakhs and crores, and people who are associated in finalizing an ERP deal or evaluating an ERP product find it very difficult to analyze or evaluate the costing. This video is about bringing in some light and sharing some knowledge to all the people who basically are looking for details in an ERP costing. Hi, my name is Raman and I'm from a company called Emerging Alliance. In my experience of working with more than 1,000+ executives around the globe, I have come across a lot of pain points and issues that my customers have expressed to me of how confusing an ERP costing is, or how the costing basically lacks transparency, and how people get swindled and cheated on ERP costing. In this video, I'm going to give you a very simple facts and truths about ERP costing and will help you evaluate an ERP costing like a pro. What we are going to do today is we will help you build an ERP cost model in which all the elements of ERP are listed, and you should be able to see if something is missing or not and evaluate the entire costing and negotiate the entire costing with your service providers like a pro. Before we dive into the ERP costing, let's basically understand that there are two types of ERP cost model. The first one is a perpetual licensing model, or in general terms, people call it as on-premise licensing model. And the second one is a subscription licensing model, or what they call it as a cloud licensing model. So let's first consider the perpetual or the on-premise kind of licensing model. When we say perpetual or on-premise kind of licensing model, let's try to understand what is a perpetual licensing model. Okay. So in a perpetual licensing model, what happens is the license, the ERP software company or developer basically licenses the software to you in perpetuality, which means like it's for unlimited or infinite number of years. And you'll end up paying an annual maintenance contract on that year on year. Okay, so that's a perpetual licensing model. Whereas when it comes to a subscription-based licensing model or cloud-based licensing model, you pay an annual subscription or a monthly subscription depending upon the subscription frequency that the software developer basically, the ERP software developer basically has. So this is the basic difference between a perpetual licensing model and a subscription-based licensing model. Now, having said what a perpetual licensing model is and what a subscription-based licensing model is, now I will go into the depths of what a costing structure looks like for a perpetual licensing model. Both the licensing model, whether perpetual or subscription, you will have to remember that there are two types of cost involved. The first cost basically is a one-time cost or upfront cost. The second type of cost is a recurring cost, which will hit you on an annual basis or on a monthly basis or a frequency of time, and that cost is something which you will have to carry until you use that particular software. Now, having understood what a one-time cost is and recurring cost is, when I help you what are different elements of cost involved in a costing model, I will mention that each element is whether a one-time cost or a recurring cost. Now, in a perpetual licensing model, there are basically 8 elements of costing involved. Okay, I'm going to go over it one by one, and I'll give you explanation for each and every element one by one. So the first element that we are going to talk about is the licenses. Okay, so the software or ERP software developer might have different type of licenses. I'm going to call all of those as one element. So there'll be a cost for license, and the cost for license, perpetual license that we're talking about, is one time and is upfront. So in most of the cases, the software developing company or the ERP software company would try to collect this money upfront from you, and then they are fair in what they are doing. So it will be a one-time cost which will be paid to you upfront. That's the licensing cost. The second costing element involved is basically the database license cost. Now, when I said license in my previous element, I was talking about the front-end license. So you basically see something on your screen where you key in your data and stuff like this. That's your front-end license. So you will have to pay a license cost for that. Now, the data that you key in over here basically goes back and gets stored at a back end and then gets retrieved when you call it back. So that's called as a database. So for every software, you basically need to have a database. So this database also has a licensing cost, and this is also one-time licensing cost, and this is also collected from you upfront. The third element that we're going to talk about is the add-ons and third-party applications. What do I mean by add-on and third-party applications? So the basic ERP application might not be able to provide you all the features and functionalities that your business requires, in which case you will have to depend upon some add-on applications which will have to work with your ERP application, or some third-party applications that you will have to buy which will have to work with your ERP application. In those cases, these are called as third-party applications, and the third-party application will also be an one-time payment, an upfront payment which will be collected from you. The fourth element that we're going to talk about is the AMC cost. AMC would stand for annual maintenance contract. All the three elements that we spoke until now, the ERP license, the database licenses, and any third-party add-on or licenses, all of these are basically software products and will require a continuous upgrade over a period of time. So you will have to pay an AMC for it, annual maintenance contract for it, which is something that every software developer requires. Keep upgrading the software. So there is something called as an annual maintenance cost or AMC cost involved, and this is the first recurring cost that you will have. The benchmark percentage for AMC is anywhere between 17% of the license cost to 22% of the license cost. It differs from product to product, but if the AMC percentage is anywhere between 17 to 22 is indicatively right. The fifth element that we're going to talk about is the consulting. Now, an ERP implementation basically has a lot of stages. It starts all the way from face-to-face interactions, conducting workshops, and then configuring your requirements, business blueprinting, training your employees, and then once the training is done, validating whether the employees can do it by themselves, validating whether all the functionalities are properly working, up to the point where they take your data, migrate it into the system, and then finally run it and show it to you, train your people, and go live. All this falls into what is called as ERP consulting part. Now, this is also a one-time payment, and it is collected in a phased manner. Generally, an implementation partner will have it split into 3 or 4 or 5 phases depending upon the number of phases that he has got. So the way the phased collection works is probably he will say the first phase might be a business blueprinting phase where he comes and sits with you, gets to know your requirement, has it configured into ERP. So once that is done, he would collect one payment from you, a stage payment from you. And then the second stage probably might be a data migration or a data collection phase where all the data is collected from you and fed into the ERP system. The third phase might be something where he completely shows your data properly run in the ERP, and then the next phase might be training phase, and then the next phase might be a going live phase. So there might be multiple phases across which the payment can be collected. The sixth element that we are going to talk about is a customization element. Okay. Now, when you consider an ERP, not necessary that all ERPs might match 100% of your business requirement, in which case you might want certain aspects of your business to be customized in your ERP software. When that happens, what you will have to pay a customization charge. Now, customization is a one-time charge and once again collected in multiple phases. The phases can be like requirement gathering can be one phase, and then they build or customize it and then give it to you. Basically, it's called as a user acceptance testing, where you look at the customization, you test it and you say it's okay. Then that's the second phase, and then doing a live is the third phase. But this is not a right session to talk about ERP customizations, but a word of hint would be, a customization is something that you do when it is a dire requirement in ERP. Otherwise, using an ERP as a standard application or using the standard features and functionalities available in ERP to begin with would be a great advice. But if your business requirements are such that it requires customization, then definitely this element would be there, and this element is a one-time payment. The seventh element that we are going to talk about is integration. Now, not necessarily all ERP implementations have integrations. When you want any third-party applications or third-party software or any machine or anything wherein the data has to be integrated to ERP, let's say that your factory basically has a lot of machines, and these machines basically work on a various shift basis, and there are certain information from the machine that needs to be fed into ERP. Then we call it as an integration. Or there is a web application that you use, or there's a CRM application that you use, and you want the CRM application to talk to your ERP application. Then this is called integration. So, not necessary that integration is a must requirement in all ERP, but if there are any integration requirements, then it will once again be a one-time cost, and the payment or the collection of the payment will happen in multiple phases. The phases might be like, there will be a requirement gathering phase, and then once the integration is successfully done, and user acceptance testing phase would be there, and then a go live phase would be there as a very basic phases that we are talking about. The eighth element that we are going to talk about is the hardware. All along, we have been talking about the software and its licenses, the implementation portion of it or the service portion of it. Now comes the hardware. For the licenses to go on sit in a hardware and the implementation to happen properly, you need an hardware in place. Okay, so you will have to budget for the hardware. You will also have to take into account the cost of the hardware. So hardware is a critical cost element in an ERP implementation, and that's the eighth one. As far as hardware goes, there are very remote chances that the company which provides the ERP application will take the ownership of the hardware. Sometimes they do. When they do not do, you will have to take the hardware costing with a hardware reseller or a server reseller. So this is also a cost. This is a significant cost because hardware cost would definitely take up at anywhere between 30 to 40% or anywhere between 10 to 20% of the ERP implementation cost, depending upon the various cases that we have. When it comes to perpetual licensing model, the licensing cost, which is the first element, the database licensing cost, which is the second element, the add-ons license or the third-party license applications, which is the third element, and the AMC cost, which is the fourth element, are all clubbed together and given to you as a subscription cost. So you will have to pay it over a frequency of time, that is like over a period of a year or over a period of a month or a quarter, depends upon how the ERP development company wants to structure it. The fifth element, which is the consulting cost, remains the same as it was in perpetual. The implementation cost or the consulting cost would be one time and upfront. The sixth element, which is customization, also remains the same as it was in perpetual. And the seventh element, which is integration, will also remain the same as it was in perpetual. Now, the last element, which is the hardware, doesn't exist in an subscription-based model or cloud-based model because the hardware or the infrastructure is managed by the company, the ERP company, which provides you the ERP application. Now that you have understood the various elements involved in a perpetual or on-premise based licensing model or in a subscription or cloud-based licensing model, let us look at the cost impact of an ERP implementation should never be assessed on a one-time basis or a one-year basis. So it is always advisable to look at your ERP cost over a period of 5 years, or if possible over a period of 7 years. So we call this as total cost of ownership. So TCO over a period of 5 years is very advisable. So your first year will have all the upfront payments or one-time payment, and your second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year needs to have all your recurring payments. On top of this, make sure that you also build the expense for scalability, which is, as every business grows, your number of licenses would increase. So it is always advisable that you factor in a 10% growth on the number of users or number of licenses over a period of year. So that is as far as number of licenses is concerned. The database might grow in size. So every 2 years, try to factor in about 10% of the initial cost as the size of database growth cost. When it comes to third-party add-ons and license, you might or you might not require it, but it is always advisable over a period of 5 years, you'll end up buying any new add-ons or any new third-party applications. So always factor in another 20% for add-ons and third-party applications. And then when it comes to AMC, it will be a recurring cost, but make sure that because your license is growing at 10% every year, so you will also have to increase your AMC cost. So you will also have to increase that in your TCO. Then when it comes to consulting is always one time, so it doesn't recur. So it will only be available in the first year. When it comes to customization, you might have major customizations completed in year 1, but over a period of time, when the users start using ERP, there might be customization requirement which comes. So it is always an healthy practice to include about 10% customization expenses year on year. When it comes to integration, this is very rare. If it doesn't get identified in year 1, it might not get identified in the consecutive year. There might be chances of integration. If you as a person who knows how the business runs, then always have a room for integration. And then as far as coming to hardware is concerned, hardware generally finalized at the beginning of the project would hold good for 5 years. That's how hardware purchase and procurement are done. There are very rare chances that you would go in for an hardware price increase or expenses incurred in the future. So you can avoid any expenses for hardware. But if you still want to add something, like you want to add you want to increase memory or you want to increase disk space, then you can always add another 10 to 15% to hardware cost. When you do this, what happens is you've got a 5-year TCO, total cost of ownership, with the scalability factor keyed in, and then you get to see the total cost of implementing and running an ERP over a period of 5 years. Now, this is exactly how you need to analyze the cost impact of ERP. You shouldn't look at ERP as a one-time cost or as a first-year cost. You will have to analyze it over a period of 5 years, because there are some ERPs which to begin with would sound less in cost, but as you go further in the years, you would incur more cost. So it is always advisable, look at the cost of ownership over a period of 5 years. So summarizing whatever we spoke in this particular video, so we have helped you understand a complete cost model at an elemental level for 2 types of ERPs, which is a perpetual ERP or an on-premise ERP, or a subscription-based ERP or a cloud ERP. And in perpetual or a subscription-based ERP, 2 types of cost, one-time cost and recurring cost. And we laid down the 8 elements which are involved in the costing, which is the license cost, the database cost, the third-party applications or the add-ons cost, the AMC cost, the consulting charges, the customization cost, the integration cost, and finally the hardware cost. Not only that, we have also spoken about how to not look at ERP cost impact as one-time cost or first-year cost, and look at the complete 5-year span of TCO, that is the total cost of ownership. Now, with all these informations available in your hand, you will be able to evaluate whether an ERP quotation and costing given to you is complete, is it transparent, and has it got all this involved and has it got all the details included and whether it fits in your budget or not. So you will be able to evaluate the ERP costing like a pro. Now this is what you're going to like. Whatever we spoke right now in this video, I would be more than happy to share with you a template, an Excel template, which is completely structured and has all the details that I spoke about ERP cost model and ERP costing as a template. And this template will help you to key in the figures and come up with what really the ERP cost, the 8 elements and the 5-year TCO. For getting this template, we have given you a link in this video and the email ID. You can always mail us and get this template from us. Thank you and see you in my next video.